Hello, everybody. This is my healthcare and culture project. Um, just record this just because I feel like some of these things are a little bit easier to convey verbally versus, I don't know, typing it out. Um, but to give a little bit of backstory to who I'm interviewing, this past summer I worked for an adventure summer camp company, leading a hiking trip primarily in Spain and Morocco. So I'm going to be talking about the Morocco side of things, because the man I interviewed was our mountain guide, or one of our mountain guides, who helped guide us to summit a mountain called Mount Toubkal. It's the highest mountain in Morocco and actually in northern Africa too. Um, and he was there, for the language barrier and to kind of help facilitate some things like that. Um, but so this man's name is Eunice. He is a mountain guide from Morocco. He was born and raised in Morocco. He's never left the country, and he's always kind of been a mountain guide. I actually think there's maybe a brief period of time where he's like a personal trainer. But for the most part, in his entire life, working life, he's been a mountain guide. He is, I believe, 32 years old, 33 maybe. And that's all he really knows is Morocco. He's got like social media and everything, but he's never traveled outside of the country before. And there are a few reasons for that. In Morocco, they have very strict rules for visa as far as like allowing native people to leave the country. And additionally, another big barrier to that is the cost of travel, because the Moroccan currency exchange is roughly like nine Moroccan dollars to one US dollar. And so it costs much more for a Moroccan person to leave the country and travel elsewhere due to that currency exchange. Yeah, so there's that. Additionally, as far as we cannot honestly be more different in a lot of ways. Like, he grew up on the opposite side of the world as me. He grew up in a completely separate culture, religion, background, belief system, with different resources and privileges. But at the same time, despite being so different, we did share similarities. We both shared a passion for the outdoors and for doing, overcoming challenging things, and for sharing that passion with other people by working with people. And that's kind of how we kind of bonded a little bit over those shared passions, despite being so different. Talking a little bit about the healthcare side of things, Eunice was fortunate in that his line of work, you kind of have to be very healthy. You kind of have to be a healthy and fit individual because you're leading other people and climbing mountains, essentially. You can't be out of shape yourself to do that. So Eunice specifically has not necessarily had a ton of experience, or had a ton of issues, having to go use the healthcare system for various things. But we did talk about it a little bit, and he gave a little bit of an overview about it. So he basically broke the system down into kind of two. There are two parts of it. There's the private part and the public part. The public part of the system is free access for anybody, kind of similar to us a little bit, I suppose. And then the downsides of that is because although it is free, you don't necessarily receive the care immediately when you need it. Maybe the quality of care is a little bit lower, versus the other side of the system is the private system, where you can pay for advanced services or quicker treatment, and that usually also leads to higher quality of care, a bit more attention, stuff like that. In general, the Moroccan healthcare system is different from the United States, just in terms of the equipment is generally weak. It's generally not the most highest quality equipment. There's also lack of human resources within the country. And then another big difference is that there's just, another big disadvantage, I would say, is that there is a large disparity in geographical distribution of medical facilities. So because Morocco, a big part of Morocco is, there's a big part that's mountainous, and then there's part that kind of goes into the Sahara, into the desert. And because of that, some of the rural mountain towns or rural towns do not necessarily have the high quality healthcare facilities that like you would maybe find in the United States. And I know there are other parts of the United States that are a little bit more devoid of medical facilities, so there are some similarities between those two. But fortunately, Eunice is a very active and healthy individual, so he has not necessarily had to use the healthcare system that often, fortunately. But honestly, though, this interview is with someone who's lived a very different life from me, both culturally and experientially, for me. But we are both still very similar in multiple ways, like what I was saying a little bit earlier about sharing the passion of the outdoors and overcoming challenges and working with people. These are similarities that we both shared and bonded over. So despite growing up on opposite sides of the world, speaking different language or having different like religious beliefs and stuff, we still shared some common passions that we were able to bond over. And so my biggest takeaway from that was, like, on paper, someone's qualities may be completely different from you. Like, on paper, you compare me to Eunice, I am a white man from the United States who, is Christian and yada, yada, yada. And then Eunice is an Arabic man from Morocco who is Islamic and has all these other things. And so we are very different on paper, but honestly, though, unless you take the time to know someone below just kind of that surface level, below what you see on the surface, then you'll never really know how similar you are to that person. Like, going into the summer, to be honest, me and my co-leader had a negative predisposition towards this company, that, like, the guide company. Not because of, like, who they were or anything like that, not because of, like their ethnicity or anything like that, but it was because the company that we were working with had kind of given us a warning in advance, saying that this company, is a little bit, unpredictable. It's not as like smooth sailing as some other countries, and that's just due to differences in cultural. So we kind of walked in having a little bit of a negative predisposition, and but that kind of helped teach me something big from the summer, which was like I learned that you never really know where you'll find your friends, even in the most unlikely places. Like, someone can be completely different from you, raised in a different environment, taught different beliefs, yet at its core, we're not as different as people perceive. And then furthermore, another kind of big takeaway, like things that I learned from Eunice that'll change how I interact with, like, myself and others and other patients, people different from me in the future, is that you should not make a judgment on someone just necessarily based on the first impression, or just based on a predisposition of someone. Like, you should not let those opinions kind of interact or dictate how you view them in the future. Like, the important thing for me was to learn how to, like, be willing to learn more about someone, change my opinion of people based on kind of like based on over time, essentially, how you get to know someone. Because, kind of going back to my point from earlier, like, you can be completely different from someone on paper, and unless you really take the time to get to know them and get to, like, know who they are actually underneath the surface level, then you'll never really understand how similar you may be. Because at the end of the day, I am from a completely different side of the world, completely different lifestyle, completely different everything from Eunice, but we still discovered similarities between the two of us. Like, I don't know, it really is hard to believe. It's really still hard for me to believe that despite people growing up, and maybe two people will never meet each other in their entire life, but they will still, they still share similarities. At the end of the day, like, people are different, on paper, but at its core, I really don't think we're that different at all. That's it.